It is time for your daily magic carpet ride. It's time for Up North at 4. Today, Jeff and I will break down John Dillinger's story. And today we'll meet the infamous Babyface Nelson. We'll get to all that in a bit, but first, here's your top 4 at 4. We are back. Before we dive back in, a brief refresher. The year is 1934. John Dillinger has just started a new gang, and he needs a place to hide out.
So it's really the second gang. The only problem with the second gang is they have one gangster named Babyface Nelson. And Dillinger's very nervous about Babyface Nelson because he is a killer. Doesn't bother him. The rest of the guys he trusts, but he's worried about Babyface. Well, anyways, they go on a big spree. By the end of the careers, Gang 1, Gang 2, they have stolen over $500,000 in cash in 1934, which today reigns into millions and millions of dollars. Well, they're so hot, they don't know what to do. They go to a hiding place. There's a bar in Fox River Grove, Illinois, owned by a man named Louis Cernacki. Now, the owner of Little Bohemia, Emil Winnetka, was also a barkeep in Chicago area. And he owned a Little Bohemia right downtown Chicago. He used to tell family members that, that St. Valentine's Day Massacre, said those guys were my everyday customers. So Emil and Nan had gotten out of Chicago because it was a violent place at the time, and they had opened Little Bohemia Lodge. Now, Louis Cernacki says to Babyface and Dillinger, and he says, I know a place where you guys can hide where no one's going to ever find you. And Dillinger says, we want to go there. So Cernacki writes what's called a letter of introduction. Now, I'm not sure I understand what that means exactly, but that letter of introduction goes with 10 people who are going to spend 3 or 4 days in the Northwoods trying to recover from all the stress of being sought after. You know, Chicago even has a Dillinger squad by now of 40 members of police officers who are trying to find the Dillinger gang. So they travel to northern Wisconsin in 3 different cars. They arrive at 3 different times. Homer Van Meter, one of the gang members, is the first to arrive and hands the letter of introduction to Emil Winnetka. Now, we have to ask ourselves, does Emil know who these people are at this point? Or is he still in a cloud as to who these guys are? We don't know. So the 10 people arrive. We've got John Dillinger. We've got Tommy Carroll and his girlfriend, Jean Delaney Crompton. We've got Homer Van Meter, his girlfriend, Marie Conforti. We've got Red Hamilton, his girlfriend, Pat Sherrington. And we have Babyface Nelson and his wife, Helen Gillis. And then we've got a guy that's kind of an errand boy. His name is Pat Riley. And that's all I'm going to tell you about Pat Riley. You'll have to learn that somewhere else. Anyways, so we've got 10 people arriving at Little Bohemia. They get there, they unpack, they tell Mrs. Winnetka, Nan, that they don't need any housekeeping duties because the women will take care of all that. So Tommy Carroll and his girlfriend and Babyface and his wife go into a cabin next to the lodge. The rest of the members of the party are upstairs in rooms at Little Bohemia. They have a great dinner and they're all chatting. Now, Dillinger doesn't allow alcohol. People don't drink in his gang. They always have to be on key, ready. They don't call him Jackrabbit for nothing. He's ready to go when he's ready to go. Anyways, they do play a game of poker. And in that poker game, Emil says, well, I got all you guys. And he lays down a full house, 3 8s and 2 queens. Then Dillinger looks at him and he goes, well, Emil, sorry. I got 3 10s and 2 queens. But he never bothers to show his hand. He just takes his arm and sweeps the money off the middle of the table. And as he sweeps that money off the middle of the table, his gun and his shoulder holster appear. And Emil goes, whoa, we got some guys here that are serious guys. himself. Nobody argues about the game or the cards or what cards John had. Emil goes to his office and he says to himself, I got to look in the Chicago Tribune, that face. Now that face is really bothering me. And he sees a picture of Dillinger, a wanted picture. And he goes, wow, I got John Dillinger here. So that night, Nan and Emil are in bed and they can't sleep all night. Nan, first of all, is really concerned because it's Dillinger. And all they hear are footsteps on the downstairs all night, back and forth across the building. And they hear him picking up the phone and putting it back down, picking up the phone, putting it back down, because it's a party line. They want to know if anybody that had been in that night is talking to anybody. The next morning, Emil gets up and fixes breakfast. And just before they sit down to breakfast with the guests, he says, could you come back in my office for a minute to John Dillinger? And he says, look at John. I see this picture in the paper. And Dillinger says, look, Emil, I'm not here to cause you any harm. All I need is a few days of rest. We have to recover and we have to figure out what our next plan was. We're not going to cause trouble. Emil says, look, all I got in my life is right here in this place. And so is my family. I don't want anything to happen. And Dillinger says, no worries. Well, that's Saturday morning. By Saturday afternoon, Nan is really angry. Babyface Nelson has been throwing a baseball with Emil Jr., who's only 8 years old. He's actually knocked the kid off his feet onto his back, playing so hard. And Nan is really becoming afraid and doesn't know exactly what to do. But she and Emil decide to write a letter to the law enforcement people in Milwaukee and say that Dillinger and his gang are staying at Little Bohemia and we are notifying you. Now, you know, a letter is not going to get to them before the gang is already gone, but they're covering their bases, I guess, because what would happen if they had known Dillinger was there and the FBI or the Bureau of Investigation found out, they'd be put in prison for aiding and abetting. And they were putting a lot of people in prison that had anything to do with these public enemies. So how are we going to get that letter mailed? Well, there's a party that night, a birthday party for a little boy named Cal Laporte, who's 8 years old as well. He's Emil's first cousin. So Nan tells the group that she'll be out for Saturday evening and she's taking her son to a birthday party. She leaves in the afternoon and she notices a car is tailing her. So she goes down a bunch of back roads and wires herself around and loses that tail. That tail was Babyface Nelson. She mails the letter and goes to the party. Now, who's at the party? You'll find out about that in our next session.
What a great cliffhanger to end on, Kay. Very good instincts there. Thank you for joining me today. We'll be back tomorrow with part 2 of the John Dillinger story here in the Northwoods.